Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Political Excess. Today, I've got my final Senate prediction map for the upcoming midterms. I will be trying to do a live stream on election night if everything goes according to plan, but this time we're going to go through each state and look at who's going to win in the Senate. Some of these are extremely difficult calls. They're very close, but I think I've seen enough polling, enough data, enough of the trends, and I've been reluctantly able to rate each of these states. So the safe states are over a 10-point margin, likely states are 5 to 10 points, lean are under 5 points, and tilt 1 point or less. Some of these margins are very borderline, but let's get the safe states out of the way. These are ones that really are not going to be competitive whatsoever. For the Democrats, there's not much to say about most of these states. It's going to be Oregon, California, Hawaii, Illinois, New York, Vermont, Connecticut, and Maryland. I don't think any of these are going to flip at all. Could the margin get under 10 points in Illinois or Connecticut? Sure, that could happen. But I haven't seen or heard anything about any of these other states really being competitive at all. Joe Pinion in New York, he seems like he's going to do better than any other Republican, but he's still not going to get it under 10. Let's go on to the safe Republican states. First is Alaska. We don't know for sure if it's going to be Lisa Murkowski. It looks like it will probably be her. There could be an upset from Kelly Tshibaka, but one thing that is pretty much for sure is it's going to be a Republican. Up to Idaho, North Dakota, South Dakota, Kansas, the Oklahoma, and the Oklahoma Special. Iowa, I still think Chuck Grassley is probably going to win by double digits. He could have an unexpectedly weak showing and win by 7 or 8, but I ended up putting this at safe for Grassley. Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana. I don't think there's much really to say about these states. They're going to be over 10 points. Maybe Missouri gets down to 9.5 on a really good night for Trudy Bush Valentine, but I'm keeping that at safe. Over to Indiana, that should be low double digits for Todd Young. Kentucky, Alabama, South Carolina with Tim Scott. Those should all be almost certain to stay with the Republicans. Now let's go on to the likely states for the Democrats. And the first state is going to be Washington. This is borderline lean for me. We're probably talking about 5.5 points. I have seen the polls that show it more narrow. I haven't seen really anything that's going to show me that Tiffany Smiley could win it. But of course, there could be an undersampling of Republican support in the polls. Patty could underwhelm and Tiffany Smiley could overperform on Election Day. I would say that is definitely unlikely, but it's not a safe margin anymore. It took me a while to come around to believe that Patty Murray is potentially vulnerable, but now that she is potentially vulnerable, I don't think it's gotten just quite to the point where it's truly competitive. But that is a state where a lot of people are saying there could be an upset in the works. I'll believe it when I see it, and I would think that would be quite monumental if Patty Murray ends up losing. Next is Colorado. I don't see Joe O'Dea getting this under 5. It's possible that he does, but I think Michael Bennet is probably going to win this at least in mid-single digits. And he actually might outperform Patty Murray, which on the surface, that's surprising in of itself. But that is it for the likely Democratic states. How about the likely Republican states? Let's get Utah out of the way. Evan McMullin, he's probably going to make it closer than a typical Democrat would. But I think this is borderline safe. I'm putting it likely just in case something crazy happens. But I don't think Mike Lee is really in much danger of losing. Personally, I think Patty Murray is more likely to lose than Mike Lee. Next state is Ohio. I've had this at likely Republican all year. I'm keeping it there. Earlier in the campaign season, when people didn't really know what to make of J.D. Vance, Tim Ryan was even leading by a couple points in some of these polls. But I always figured by Election Day, the lean of the state would win out, and I would be stunned if J.D. Vance lost. And at this point, he seems likely to win it by over 5 points. And I would say he's more likely to win it by 10 than he is to lose. And the last state here for the Republicans is going to be Florida. Could Marco Rubio win by double digits? Of course he could. But right now, I'm thinking it's going to be high single digits, probably around 9 points. And that is still quite impressive considering it's Florida. He's probably going to underperform Ron DeSantis, which I initially thought was not going to happen. So there are some things changing here in the final month. But I never thought Val Demings was going to make this truly competitive for the Democrats. And at this point, it seems like she has almost no chance. Let's go through the rest of these states one at a time. And let's start West Coast and go to the East Coast. First, we'll do Nevada. This is one of these states that I always thought was going to be a prime pickup opportunity for the Republicans, and it seems to have panned out that way. Catherine Cortez Masto, the Democrat incumbent, She seems okay, but probably a little bit lackluster. But then again, I also think that about Adam Laxalt, the Republican, plus he did lose a statewide race for governor last time. So there's a case to be made for both sides. Is the state going to trend toward the right some more? That's going to be the question. What's the margin going to be in Clark County? Are the polls undersampling Democrats? Those are all questions that we got to get the answers to. Most of the polling slightly shows Laxalt ahead, but I think this is going to be an extremely close race. But all things considered, I'm putting this as a tilt for the Republican Adam Laxalt. Next is Arizona. This is a great race between Mark Kelly, the astronaut, and Blake Masters, the political outsider. Mark Kelly had a lead pretty much all year up until the final month. Now his lead has pretty much turned into a pure toss-up. Similar to J.D. Vance in Ohio, I think Blake Masters needed some time to get his name out there and let people know where he stands. I'm glad there was that one debate, and since then the Libertarian candidate has dropped out and endorsed Blake Masters. That might boost Masters by 1 point or so. Plus, we don't know how accurate the polls are going to be. Are they undersampling Republicans? It's all possible. To me right now, this is a pure coin flip. If I make this video in 10 minutes from now, I could easily change my answer. So my confidence in this rating is low. However, the slight thing against Masters right now is I've yet to see him really leading in any polls. However, given how narrow it is, given how the Libertarian candidate dropped out, given how the polls underestimated the Republicans last time, I'm going to very, very slightly give this a tilt to Blake Masters. The funny thing about Arizona is I actually had Mark Kelly winning this by a tilt, but I ended up re-editing the video because I just think Masters is going to end up pulling it out. The next state is Wisconsin. This one I always thought would be staying with the Republicans. There was a period of time a couple of months ago where it looked like Mandela Barnes might actually be able to flip it. I think some of his past statements and positions have kind of hurt him over the last couple of months. And since then, Ron Johnson appears to be leading in most of the polls. On paper, I don't think Ron Johnson is some super strong candidate. But due to the environment and due to the trend of the state, it does seem like Johnson will hold on, and I have this at lean Republican. Next, let's go over to New Hampshire. This is a state where it seemed like the Democrats were going to hold this fairly easily up until maybe a couple weeks ago. Maggie Hassan is not super popular, and Don Bolduc was not the preferred choice of the establishment in the primary. The primary was kind of late in the campaign season, so Don Bolduc needed some time to really make his case. But there were 2 debates, and some polling has come out, and it does show it has narrowed up. So if the Republicans flip this, it's not going to be completely stunning. But my final rating on this is tilt for the Democrats. Maggie Hassan is the incumbent, but if she does lose, I think Republicans would win 54 seats and have a nice cushion in the Senate. Let's move on to Pennsylvania. This race has had a lot of twists and turns in it. Republicans really need to hold this seat. It's pretty much the only realistic chance I think Democrats have to flip anything here. It's been a fascinating race. John Fetterman has pretty much had a lead most of the entire year. Up until the last couple of weeks, we've started to see Dr. Oz eking out some advantages in the polls. I think the debate really did sway 2 to 3% of the population against Fetterman and for Dr. Oz. And that does make sense. Sure, if you support Fetterman, you'd vote for him no matter what because you want to see those policies enacted. But anybody that was kind of out of politics or on the fence, they would see that debate, and they're not going to really care that Dr. Oz might have a few mansions. They're going to see that John Fetterman did struggle. And like it or not, Dr. Oz just appears more capable to serve in the U.S. Senate. And in a very close state like this, I think that's enough to give Dr. Oz a tilt advantage. Next state down the East Coast is North Carolina. This is another state where it seemed like it was just going to stay red this time. There's been a little bit of hype, mostly from Democrats, saying this state is in play and there could be an upset. I agree that there is a small possibility of that happening. I think the state as a whole has a red tilt to it, and given this kind of environment and the national issues, I think Ted Budd is going to win by a lean margin, probably 3 to 4 points. If he has a great night, it could even get over 5. And finally, the last state is Georgia. Similar to Pennsylvania, this race has had some twists and turns. It's been back and forth. Nobody has held a lead consistently. All the scandals that Herschel Walker has been through has not really seemed to wipe out his chances. Warnock is the incumbent, but he doesn't seem to be polling super well. He's not really hitting 50% much at all. A lot of times he's in the mid-40s. It's a red-leaning year, and Georgia has mostly been a red state over the last couple decades up until very, very recently. I would think the suburbs around Atlanta DeKalb and Gwinnett County, I think they're going to trend a little bit toward the right this time, and obviously that's going to help Herschel Walker. Some of his scandals might turn off some of those suburban voters. Herschel Walker's football career, that might also help him on the margins. But the first question we have to ask is, will this go to a runoff or will someone win it outright? I'm not sure the winner will change if it's a runoff or not, but all things considered, all polls analyzed, my final rating on this is tilt Republican. So that is my map, and that would result in 53 Republican senators, 47 Democratic senators. 5 of these states I think are totally up in the air as I gave them a tilt margin, but the winds do seem to be at the Republicans' backs going into Election Day. I understand the abortion issue is one that is favoring the Democrats. I don't necessarily think the January 6th defending democracy stuff is really all that motivating or swaying anybody in the middle. I think far too many of the national issues are favoring Republicans: crime, immigration, inflation, homelessness, etc. I made a best-case scenario for the Republicans a few weeks ago, and it seems much more possible this time. If it does happen, it would give Republicans 54 seats in the Senate. I think a total failure for the Republicans at this point would result in an even 50-50 Senate again. I'm sure I'll be wrong on at least a couple of these states. That's fine, everybody else is going to be too. It's hard to make these calls when it's so competitive, but this is what I've settled on. Let me know in the comments, do you mostly agree with this map, or do you mostly disagree with this map? Let me know down below. And if you enjoy this channel, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Hit the bell for notifications. Thank you for watching. I'll see you on the next video.